Hey Grace Church, Michael Campbell here. Hey, I just wanted to share the story that the kids are going to be going through this weekend, and us as parents and guardians, how do we let them know that the story does apply to them, but most importantly, how it applies to us as Christians and affects our relationship with God. So this week we are going through Luke chapter 15, and honestly, this is one of the most impactful, beautiful stories in the entire Bible. So Jesus is talking to the tax collectors and the Pharisees, and there's three parables. And the first one, Jesus was talking about if a shepherd has 100 sheep and he loses one, he goes out and he finds them. And the second one, he's talking about the woman who has 10 silver coins. She loses one, and doesn't she clean up the whole house just to look for this one coin? And it's representative of Jesus coming after us and God coming after us and rescuing and redeeming. But that sets up the most beautiful story that we see that you are probably familiar with, and that's the story of the prodigal son. And this is a setting and a culture where this kind of action taken by the sons was extremely disrespectful. So you have this man, and he has two sons, a younger and an older. And the younger is like, can I have my inheritance? Which is pretty crazy because you only got the inheritance if somebody was dead. So the older son, naturally in that day, would get 2/3 of it, and the younger son would get 1/3. And the son was basically saying, you are better off dead. I would rather have your inheritance and the blessings that are from you than to actually have a relationship with you. He wanted to be disconnected completely, which in that day, the father would have just either emotionally or physically kicked them out of the house, out of the family completely. But what does the father do? He splits off himself and completely gives it to this son who doesn't deserve it, but out of his love, he just lets him go. And this son is living his own way, and he takes the inheritance and just uses it poorly and unwisely and completely loses everything. And he ends up being literally in the mud with the pigs, and he's starting to think, wow, I've made a mistake. I regret the actions that I've had. So I'm gonna go back to my father. I'm gonna tell him what happened, and then I'm gonna work my way up to earn his favor, because he knows that just a conversation and wouldn't be enough to actually reconcile him in his relationship with his father. So he's walking back. And if you can imagine, if you're putting yourself in the parent's shoes, if you were to see somebody who completely broke your family apart and took advantage of you and stole your money, and you see them outside of your kitchen window and you see them walking up, I bet your first natural reaction would be, this better be good. They better have a good reason to come back here in my presence. But that's not what happened with the father in this story. The father in this story sees them and runs. And if you know anything, people, especially men and leader of the household, did not run. Only kids, only youth, sometimes women ran. Because for a man to pull up his dressing and to show his legs at all even was nothing. You didn't do that in that culture. So this man, out of his compassion, completely ran towards the son. And his son was building up this, articulating this conversation with his father, like, I'm going to tell him this, this, and this, and then I'll be accepted. But the father doesn't even allow him to talk. He just runs, grabs him, hugs him, and he says, take my ring, let's get a feast, let's throw a party, everything. But the fact that he was clothed and with his ring, that was a signet ring. This wasn't just jewelry. This was representing authority in the family. He is saying, you can take everything else I got, including my authority. And I think we make a mistake as Christians if we read this and just notice the youngest son, because the prodigal son also is the older son who acts in disrespectful ways. He thinks he has earned it fully. He's earned this favor and this feast, and he completely disrespects the father in this way as well. In our Christian walk, we need to understand that God sees us as we are constantly rebelling and going against him and his ways, but he pursues us and he draws us in. When we didn't deserve the inheritance, we've taken advantage of it, and he has lavished his love and grace upon us. And it's a really cool and beautiful story. That's what we're going through this week. Hopefully these next questions can help you dive into the story with your kids. and just get to talk about the grace of God and how he loves us no matter what. So the first question is, who are you most like? The younger brother who breaks the rules, or the older brother who thinks the rules can save him? Again, remember, both brothers needed a relationship with the Father, not just one of them. The second question, how is the gospel good news for both rule breakers and rule followers? And the last question, or statement, challenge for the kids is, praise a family for somebody that you know who is far from God. I was very encouraged by this lesson. I would love to hear your feedback about how the discussions go. But until next week, God bless and take care.